Hi, my name is Allison. Today I'm going to break down two exercises. The first one is going to be the dumbbell bench press as my upper extremity exercise, and the second one is going to be a bodyweight squat as my lower extremity exercise. I picked these exercises because they're foundational compound movements that show how multiple joints and muscle groups work together, which is important for real-world scenarios and conditioning. For the upper extremity exercise, it's the dumbbell bench press. The exercise is a individual laying flat on a bench, and you take the weights and press up from the chest until the elbows are fully extended, and then lowering them under control. So if you would like to demonstrate. The primary agonist of the movement is going to be the pectoralis major, and the synergists are going to be the anterior deltoids here, which is more so the front of the shoulder, and the triceps, which are back here. You can stop now. The main agonists of the movement are going to be the latissimus dorsi, so basically the wings, the lats that people are familiar with, and the posterior deltoid, which is the back of the shoulder, which oppose the horizontal flexion and pushing. The joints involved in this movement are going to be the glenohumeral joint, which is the shoulder, the elbow, the radial-ulnar joint, which is, if you think of your forearm whenever you pivot, the wrist, the sternoclavicular joint, which is like your sternum and your clavicle, and the scapulothoracic joint, which is between your scapula and your rib cage. That's going to be something you see on the back, which is very hard to point out while he's laying flat on his back. For the planes of motion and the axis that the movement is going through, the shoulder joint is moving through the horizontal flexion and extension in the transverse plane along the vertical axis. The elbow joint is flexing and extensing in the sagittal plane through the medial-lateral axis, and the wrist joint is going through slight extension and flexion to stabilize the arm during the movement through the sagittal plane and the medial-lateral axis. One variation that targets the same agonist and antagonist is the incline dumbbell bench press. You start by putting the bench at an incline, and we emphasize the upper fibers of the pectoralis major and the anterior deltoid, but still using the same main muscle groups through those same joint motions. Alright, if you want to stand up so we can do the bodyweight squat. For the bodyweight squat, you're going to stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, and then to go through the movement, you're going to set your hips back and down, primarily trying to hit at least 90 degrees at the knee, and back up. You're going to turn to the side so I can show the 90. Whenever you go down, you want to hit at least 90 degrees unless you have something stopping you, and then you just stand back up. In the upward phase, the quadriceps extend the knee and the gluteus maximus extends the hip, making them the main agonist. The hip flexors oppose hip extension, and the hamstrings can oppose knee extension, so they function as agonists at those joints. So the primary agonist is going to be your quads, which are here. And then your synergists are going to be your hamstrings and your adductor magnus. So hamstrings on the back of the leg, and your adductor here. And then the main antagonist is going to be your hip flexors, and to some extent, your hamstrings as well. The joints involved in the movement are going to be the hip joint, which is a ball and socket, the knee joint, which is a hinge, the ankle, which is also a hinge joint, the subtalar joint under the ankle, the lumbar spine here, and the sacroiliac joint. The hip flexes and extends through the sagittal plane along the medial-lateral axis. The knee flexes and extends through the sagittal plane along the medial-lateral axis as well. And the ankle follows the same trend through dorsiflexion and plantar flexion through the sagittal plane and the medial-lateral axis. Most of the visible movement in the squat happens in the sagittal plane around the medial-lateral axis. One variation that can use the same agonist and antagonist is a goblet squat, holding a dumbbell. Can you grab a dumbbell, please? At which point you're going to turn this way. Hold the dumbbell at the chest or a kettlebell if you have that. This keeps the same joint actions but can help with staying more upright and moving and improving depth. So you perform the same basic movement, just holding the dumbbell up. So feet hip width apart, trying to keep a neutral spine, and trying to hit 90 degrees when you go down in your descent, and then trying to push through the ground on your descent. In this video, I chose the dumbbell bench press and the bodyweight squat because they're fundamental upper and lower body movements. I also showed a variation of each exercise that targets the same muscles being used, so the same prime movers, the same agonist and antagonist. Thank you for watching.